Hello friends, today I'm going to talk about scientific research and the characteristics of scientific method. Now scientific research is an organized, objective, controlled, qualitative or quantitative empirical analysis of one or more variables. Now in this definition you should understand the terms which are very important because sometimes direct questions come on the terms of scientific research. So basically the first word is scientific research is organized. Basically, why organized? Because there is a proper structure and procedure which we follow to get answers to your questions. So science is basically organized, where you have these rules and procedures where you have to follow to reach to the conclusions of the research project. Apart from that, scientific research is objective, where we believe that reality exists independently of the researcher. So his opinions and emotions we are trying to eliminate from the entire research process. Basically, researcher's opinions or his beliefs or his emotions may influence the research project, in the end the research outcome or the results, and that is why we try to keep the entire process very objective, so that subjectivity does not creep into the research or the results in the end. And apart from that, scientific research happens in a controlled environment. So what happens in scientific research is basically you are testing an impact of one variable over the another variable. So one will be your dependent variable and the other will be your independent variable, and you are testing what changes this independent variable brings on the dependent variable. Now what is a variable? Basically variables are the phenomena or the events or a place, a thing which you are trying to measure in a research. So here you are trying to measure the impact of independent variable on the dependent variable. Now the researcher tries to keep the entire research under his control, or he does the research in a controlled environment, so that you don't have other independent variables influencing the dependent variable. So the researcher may study one or two variable which he knows. Apart from that, there are various other variables which will come and influence your dependent variable. Here he tries to eliminate the extraneous or confounding variables which may influence the dependent variable. So this is how research happens, scientific research happens in a controlled environment, where you see to it that explanations are not based on other independent variables or other factors which are not part of your research project. The definition uses two terms, which is qualitative or quantitative. Now qualitative, the data comes in all forms. It can be reports which a researcher writes, it can be photographs, it can be videos, it can also be numbers in some cases. Whereas quantitative data is purely in numbers. So here what the definition says, that scientific research is an organized, objective, controlled, qualitative or quantitative empirical analysis of one or more variables. Now what is empiricism? Empiricism means experience. Now people gain knowledge based on experience. So the researcher is dealing with things which are knowable and potentially measurable. So these two things are very important, knowable and potentially measurable phenomena the researcher is dealing with. So you are not giving nonsensical, or you are not dealing with metaphysical explanation of things, because you cannot measure them. Can you measure God's will? For example, there is a decrease in the circulation of newspapers. So you cannot simply say that just because of God's will the newspaper circulation is going down. So there are factual or observable or measurable reasons for that. So the principle of empiricism deals with things which could be perceived and measured. What the definition says, that scientific research is an organized, objective, controlled, qualitative or quantitative empirical analysis of one or more variables. So the definition of scientific research. So remember all the terms because there will be direct questions. Now we'll move on to the characteristics of scientific method. I have spoken about the different methods of knowing in another video. I'll put the link in the description. Now let's start with the characteristics of scientific method. Scientific research is public. Basically, all information regarding your study has to be public. You cannot claim the accuracy of your findings based on private knowledge, private methods, or private data. So all the information which is generated or scientifically created should be public. When the information is public, you can identify the gaps of the previous studies and work on those gaps. It can be your research problems as well. And apart from that, while writing reports, you need to take all the care, because you have to give all the details of your study so that the replication of your study can happen, because the strength of a study will be only based on whether it could be replicated in by some other researchers and it finds out the same findings. So science or scientific knowledge has to be public. Scientific method is objective in the sense that you are trying to remove the opinions, biases, or the subjectivity which the researcher brings to the study. So for that you have explicit rules and procedure which the researcher has to follow, letting the chips fall wherever it should. And this is how scientific research progresses. As I told you, that scientific research is organized, where rules and procedures have to be followed so that you can eliminate the subjectivity which the researcher brings into the study. Apart from that, there are rules to classify behavior, where one or more observer should measure that behavior in the same manner. Now let's take an example. To measure an appeal of a television commercial, the researcher may ask the observer to note down the number of times a viewer may change the commercial, and then he could ask the observers to measure the negative facial expressions of the viewers. Now the first approach where is very objective, because the researcher or the observer can note down the number of times a person changes a channel. But when you ask the observers to note down the negative facial expressions of the viewers, this brings in the subjectivity of the observer. So for this, there are rules for classifying behavior. So for this, you have to give a proper definition to the term negative facial expressions. Now when you give a proper definition to negative facial expression, all the coders or the observers will measure the negative facial expressions in the same way. Now moving on, science is empirical. Researchers are dealing with a world which is knowable and potentially measurable. So a researcher should be able to observe, classify, or measure the concepts which he is studying. For this, he has to define the concepts properly so that everyone should experience the concepts in the same way. All the concepts in your research or your study has to be defined properly so that it allows for objective observation and measurement of that concept, for which we give an operational definition. The definition will be on the screen right now. So operational definition specifies procedures that allow one to experience or measure a concept. For example, let's take negative facial expression. Now you have given a strict definition to what the concept negative facial expression means. Once you have given a very strict definition to negative facial expression, all the observers in the study will experience negative facial expression in the similar or same manner. So that is the purpose of an operational definition. So all the concepts which are part of your hypothesis or your research questions are defined well, so that all the people who are reading your study or who are part of the study may experience the concept in a same manner. So that is the function of an operational definition. Moving on, scientific research is systematic and cumulative. So scientific research starts with a single carefully observed event and moves on to the creation of a theory or a law. Now these two definitions are very important. What is a theory and what is a law? A theory is a set of related propositions that presents a systematic view of the phenomena by specifying relationships among the concepts. Now when the relationships among the variables are invariant under given conditions, then the researcher may formulate a law. Basically, a law is a statement of facts meant to explain in concise terms an action or a set of actions that are accepted to be true or universal. So when you talk of laws, basically laws are statement of facts, and a law is true everywhere. Universally, a law has to be true. Theories can be disapproved, but laws are laws. So laws cannot be disapproved because they are generally accepted to be true and universal. So that is the difference between theory and law. Theories can be disapproved, but laws stands. For example, Newton's law of gravity. Now the last characteristic, science is predictive in the sense that science is focused on relating the present to the future. For example, you can take the rise in the global temperatures, which are leading to the increase in the sea levels. So what is happening is that we are relating the present to the future, because you have the melting ice caps or the rise in the global temperatures. The sea levels are basically going to increase. So this is how science relates the present to the future. So these are the characteristics of scientific method. So guys, thank you for watching, and keep working hard.